Okay, cool. Looks like we're back in business. All right. Again, apologies for the inconvenience. We're going to get started now. But before we get started, here's a reminder of how to use the Teams webinar controls. Please drop your questions in the chat along the way. As we're presenting, and at the end of the presentation, if we have some time, we're going to try to answer as many questions as we can. So, good afternoon, everybody. Hello, welcome. Brendan McDowell. I'm a principal planner here at the Office of Planning and Development, and here with me today is Matt Monahan. He's a senior planner at the Central New Hampshire Regional Planning Commission. Matt has extensive experience in municipal land use planning on a wide variety of issues, including land use regulation development, and amendments, economic development programs, as well as serving as a circuit rider planner for various communities. So we're very happy to have him with us today. So I'll go over a quick little agenda here, and we'll launch right into things. So we're going to start off with a brief review of the RSAs related to the creation and authority of the Planning Board and its regulation authority. We're going to talk about what is a technical review committee, or TRC. There's also another reference out there that you may or may not have seen, a technical advisory committee, or a TAC. They're pretty similar premises as a TRC. Sometimes it's used interchangeably, but we're going to specifically talk about TRCs throughout this presentation. So we're going to talk about TRCs and their roles and responsibilities. TRCs with either approval authority or as advisory committees. And then Matt and I will review some municipal examples of various kinds of TRCs. And if we have some time at the end, we'll do a little Q&A. So with all of that out of the way, let's review briefly, go back to the basics. We'll review the RSAs involved with the land use planning that have been in place in order to create TRC with site review or site plan review authority. So first, a municipality needs to have authorized the establishment of a planning board according to 673:1. Then the planning board needs to adopt bylaws and a master plan. The master plan has to include, at a minimum, the required vision and land use sections. And once a planning board has been created and adopted bylaws and a master plan, the municipality can authorize the planning board to review and approve subdivisions. All right, so after the completion of establishing a planning board, election of planning board officers, creation and adoption of a master plan, and authority to review and approve subdivisions, the next step would be granting the planning board the authority to adopt zoning through the RSAs 674:16 and 674:18. So after the zoning ordinance has been adopted, the final step would be the municipality votes to allow the planning board to have site plan review authority under RSA 674:43 and 674:43 Roman numeral 3. And this is where the technical review committee gets its authority to review site plans. And just for your reference, if you'd like to see the full RSA, it's right here. I should have mentioned earlier, but these slides are already available on our website, which Elvina can put into the chat at some point. And so this is for future reference if you want to go back and take a look at the language in full. So let's talk about what is a TRC. So it consists of municipal officials and or board or commission members, whether or not a TRC will serve as an advisory committee or another arm of the planning board that has approval authority, and that's up to how the warrant article was voted on by the legislative bodies. All right, so some of the roles and responsibilities of a TRC. So again, they can be either advisory or have approval authority, and they can and should be included as an important initial part of the development review process. So their responsibility is to provide technical and professional assistance to applicants in the development review process. It also informs the town departments of development projects and creates communication with the planning board, which is overall good for the community from a cooperation and development point of view. So we talked about how there's two kinds of TRCs. Um, there are TRCs with approval authority over minor site plan review processes and more advisory. So we'll dive a little deeper into the TRCs with approval authority here. Um, so if the municipality adopts the provisions of RSA 674 uh, 43 Roman numeral 3, authorizing the planning board to delegate their site plan review powers and duties in regard to minor site plan review, then the TRC becomes a committee of the planning board with approval authority over minor site plans. So the planning board has created the or has to create the criteria or thresholds of what constitutes what a minor site plan is. So those criteria should be included in the site plan regulations and in some cases the zoning ordinance, like for home occupations, parking space expansions, etc. So the planning board adopts rules of procedure on behalf of the TRC that outline the conduct and proceedings of the TRC. The TRC is an arm of the planning board, so the same types of rules and regulations apply to them as well. So if your TRC has minor site plan approval authority, uh, it is the planning board's job to determine what constitutes a minor site plan. So these can be located in the site plan regulations and or in the zoning ordinance. So some different types of minor site plans for the TRC to review and approve are things like new construction or additions for non-residential buildings between 1,000 and 5,000 square where no new facilities or utilities are required, construction of new parking spaces or parking lots less than 2,000 square feet, a major home business, or temporary events. So minor site plans are applications that should go through some type of municipal review and approval process, but are minor enough in size and scope that an application to the full planning board may be too much money and time for an applicant and a planning board. So in the rules of procedure, there should be an avenue for the applicant and the TRC to choose to have the applicant appear in front of the planning board for review and approval. So an example could be an application that meets the criteria of a minor site plan, but it could intensify the use of the site, and a TRC member thinks the application should go to the full planning board for review. Or the applicant may request to go to the full planning board after going through the TRC process. Either way, there needs to be an out as a relief type valve for the applicant and the TRC. So we'll talk about some benefits. Why adopt a TRC with site plan review authority? Uh, the benefits include it alleviates the planning board from having to review minor site plans, which could gum up the process for them. It streamlines the development process for the applicant, and it can save the municipality and the developer time and money in the development process. And it can provide conceptual consultation, review input for the applicant, which can be really valuable for them. So the TRC, so switching gears here. So we just learned about the TRC with minor site plan approval authority. Now we're going to switch gears to the TRC as an advisory committee. So it has a lot of the same roles and responsibilities and makeup as the TRC with approval authority. So a TRC as an advisory committee is also an important role in the development process, benefits, as well as the benefits that we just discussed. So it's set up with municipal authorization, designed to provide technical assistance to the applicants. It streamlines the development process and provides review and comment on subdivisions and site plans. So the TRC as an advisory committee, again, has the same roles and responsibilities. It can provide conceptual consultation review. There we go. Can provide conceptual consultation review input for the applicant. It can save the municipality and the developer time and money in the development process. And the chair of the TRC or planning staff reports to the planning board on all applications before the TRC. So it increases communication for everybody. So continuing some of the overall benefits, so it fosters cooperation and communication with municipal departments over development projects. It informs departments of large projects that are coming down the pipeline and can assist departments with budget and CIP items. It can provide conceptual consultation review and input and streamlines the development review process for the developer and the municipality. So after going over all of that, I'm going to pass things along to Matt. And since we're having a little bit of trouble with the slides, so I'm going to keep progressing the slides, and Matt will give his side of the presentation. So take it away, Matt.
Awesome. Thank you. So really quick, it's important. Like the first thing is to remember what is the intent of the type of TRC you're going to use.
I'm not hearing Matt.
Oh, hold on a second here.
I do hear you.
You do hear me? Oh, hold on a
Yes,
sec.
we can hear you, Matt. We just can't see you.
Okay. Yeah, I can turn my camera on, but just a warning, like the sun is crazy behind me. Yeah, I'll turn that off. That's kind of rough. Anyway, so yeah, so the first thing is to remember like what's the the intent of the TRC, right? The approval one is going to focus on getting those approvals and taking those things off the plate of the planning board and being a little more efficient in the approval process. The second thing is with the TRC that's advisory, that's really about early and often communication between the board, the department heads, and the applicant. And also the town engineer if there's any legal stuff that pops up. I think that's number one. And for the TRC, and just kind of generally, I'll probably talk a little bit more about the advisory one because that's a little more squishy than the approvals. The approvals are pretty straightforward. You got a minor site plan that comes in, you run through the process, you either approve it or you don't. The advisory one is kind of, well, what are we producing at the back end of this TRC? And it's really a more complete application. That's the goal of that one. So that's why you want as much information early and often. Department heads weighing in on, hey, there's a sewer easement over here you haven't thought of. Maybe there's some checklist. Excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold. Maybe there's some checklist questions about whether or not a waiver is required. As everybody knows, there's often confusion about, oh yeah, is this NA or is this a waiver? Like that can get kind of teased out in that process and go from there. So with that in place, the next thing is to think about where in the timeline you want to do it. Obviously, with the TRC, that's going to be approval based. That's pretty straightforward. refer to the approval process, your butter notices, your timeline. You're going to use the planning board's timelines with that. With the advisory TRC, it's, well, do you require it before they apply to make their formal application, or after they apply? Like, what triggers them, getting on the TRC? Other things, how flexible do you want to be with the meeting schedule? And you can also do topic or event specific TRCs. I've seen examples where an application actually, spoiler, it's in the later presentation, where the applicant comes back for a TRC specific to a particular element of the plan. Next slide, please. Okay. So really, right out of the gate, the first thing you want to do with both TRCs is make sure all the department heads are being invited and have the opportunity to weigh in. Some of them are going to be more involved than others. So, for example, an advisory TRC that's dealing with a subdivision, the superintendent may want to weigh in. Whereas if you have a site plan, or if you have a TRC that's doing approval on minor site plans, they're probably not going to weigh in on that, McDonald's or home occupation. So that, just be aware that some department heads are going to want to participate more than others. You can address this by giving them the opportunity to say no comment. Just invite them, and that superintendent who's not going to come to the McDonald's TRC, no comment, right? As I mentioned before, in both cases, you may want, if you have a circuit rider planner, a town engineer, and even the attorney, right? If you've got easement issues or potential deeds, or open space considerations for a subdivision in the advisory TRC, there could be value there for the applicant and the board. But keeping in mind that those are fees that are typically escrow fees that are charged to the applicant. So you want to be judicious about those third-party reviews, or third-party participants. And then the best way to handle the conversation is go around the room. Okay, department heads weigh in on the advisory one, go around the room. Department heads weigh in. Somebody speaks from the planning board's perspective with regards to zoning, regulation, and checklist. That can be, if there's a planner or a circuit rider planner, they can handle that. In some communities, you have somebody from the planning board who serves on the TRC. It can be the chair, it could be, somebody else. But just somebody that speaks to that conversation about the regs, the checklist, things they may need to expect at the meeting, things like that. For the advisory, for the approval TRC process, they're just going to follow the general planning board process for processing site plans, which is all spelled out in RSA. Next slide. So you're going to want to do minutes or notes, right? In both TRCs. Obviously for the approval one, you've got to have notes, who makes the motions, waivers approved, all those kinds of things, as you would any other application. In the advisory TRC, all parties want to walk out of there with some degree of, what are the action items at the bare minimum. So minutes or notes in both cases are going to be important. The feedback for the advisory TRC is important because what's going to happen is, if you think of a planning board process, it's kind of like a tennis match, right? The applicant serves up here's my application, they serve it up, the planning board kicks back. That back and forth conversation is key to getting a plan that's complete at that first meeting. And that's where the advisory TRC helps out. So that memo recapping, here's what TRC identified, here's all the things you need to do to address, the sewer department, the fire department, and, these 3 missing checklist items, and you probably need waivers over here. And you want to get that to the applicant as often as possible, or as soon as possible, so that they can make the revisions in time for the planning board, the planner, like the town side of the table to digest those new changes. And this third bullet here is important. You want to be clear, and it kind of ties off the second one. You want to be clear that there is, and this generally goes for any planning board process, that there's a deadline for new materials to come in. The TRC makes this a little easier to enforce, because and I'm sure all you guys out there know, like the planning board gets a new plan set or a study or something the morning of the meeting. That's not helpful. You're not, as an applicant, you're not meeting that informational need to the planning board. It's kind of chaos. So, and it doesn't help them, it doesn't help the board, it just gets them continued. And, it's not fun, right? So that's why this third bullet is important. Say, okay, here's the deadline, and you spell that out like in your memo. What I do, like when I do a memo from a TRC, revise materials in by this date to be considered at the next meeting. And you can offer this last one. You can offer additional TRCs. Like I said, I've seen instances where applicants have asked for additional TRCs to sort through that. And that's on the advisory side of things, obviously not the approval one. Next slide. Okay, so different models to address these. So there's a few advisory ones in here. There is a approval one in here, and there's also kind of a different advisory one at the end here. So Allenstown, the TRC takes place as soon as the application comes in, that triggers it. It's like application, it's the table, it gets stamped at the town hall. Can we see yeah, I can show you, I kind of roll it into my general review memo, but at the end, I'll definitely show you what my memos look like and where the TRC stuff is contained. But yeah, so application comes in, the TRC is set, and it's a little flexible here to make sure that all the participants can make it. The intent is to try and get as much in person as possible. So as you can see, it's department heads, me as the circuit rider, planning board chair, and whoops, there we go. And then attorney or engineer as needed. Department heads can say, hey, look, I got nothing on this. I'm the superintendent. This is a McDonald's, no comment, right? That's key. You want to be, careful with people's time. They do provide escrow for the applicant. The applicant provides escrow for third-party participation there. And what happens is I'll do a first memo basically from the TRC that is kind of like a full planning review memo with the TRC comments built in. So it's part of one review. So the applicant gets that, then they have an opportunity to make revisions. There's a hard date that this stuff comes in by. And in Allenstown, they process applications on their 2 dates, right? Like a lot of towns will have a workshop day and an application day in the month. They'll take them on both days, right? So what kind of plays out is TRC happens as it comes to a close. I'm like, hey, you're going to get a memo outlining my review plus TRC comments. When do you think you can get the materials in by so we can get you on that next closest meeting? So it works pretty well. So that's Allenstown. Next slide. Chichester. So they have a little different take, right? It's advisory as well, just like Allenstown. Theirs are for major site plans and major subdivisions only. Similar participation, department heads, planner, engineer, somebody from the planning board. Similar memo review process where I'll issue one and then a second. And very similar to Allenstown, except it's more regularly scheduled. So there's a little less flexibility in when they schedule it, and it's only for major applications only. The one thing I just want to say on the advisory ones is oftentimes, an applicant will see that as quote unquote another meeting, but it's really designed to help them be ready for that actual planning board meeting. In Chichester, we just had one where the guy's like, "Oh, I didn't do TRC," and that was his initial reaction. It's like, "Oh, another meeting." But once he got into the TRC and he was getting the feedback from the department heads and getting the checklist items discussed and getting a clear sense of what his application should look like so the planning board can act on it, he actually saw a lot of value in it. So I think that's kind of the key. Like that's like an unspoken thing in the background is the advisory TRC is often initially when people first hear about it, right? They're like, oh, it's just another meeting, but it's really helpful to everybody. But yeah, so that's the difference with Chichester is they just have it for majors and it's kind of a hard schedule. Next slide, please. Boscawen, they are a approval TRC, and they don't typically call circuit rider. I circuit ride for them as well. I think I've sat in on one or two, and they literally just run it like a planning board. They've got their abutter notices. They've got their department heads there. Fires there. All the building inspector, the community development director, code enforcement, and they just run it like a planning board meeting during the day. It comes in and it's like literally just like a planning board hearing on an application, the minors, and they're done. And I think that it's probably been beneficial for the planning board to have these taken off the table for them because, they do tend to have a few applications before the board every month. So to take these minors off the table, it's very helpful. Next slide. Okay, so topic specific and additional. I mentioned spoiler alert previously. This is what I was talking about. So in 2022, in the midst of the COVID fund, there were a couple really big projects that came in. One of them was a refurbishing of a mill, and another one was for senior housing, like assisted living facility. They did the initial TRC, went through it, the required TRC, that's required by regs, um, in both applications. Got to the planning board meeting and they discovered that some of the department heads showed up at the meeting after having been at the TRC, and there was conversations regarding traffic and transportation for both of these instances. So what happened was, a lot of the stuff that was discussed there um, was just specific to traffic and transportation. You know, easements, all the technical aspects of the traffic situation for both of the applications. So the applicant, through the course of that first public hearing, it came up. It's like, hey, yeah, let's do another TRC specific to just traffic and transportation, the technical aspects of that. Let the engineers talk about their back and forth at the TRC and anything regarding all the technical stuff. So that's exactly what happened. They were able to identify all the remaining issues and come up with a few thoughts on how to mitigate some things. And yeah, they basically had another TRC in both cases to address the technical aspects of traffic. Next slide.
And so I think you're kicking it back to me
Mhm.
on this one. All right, so our final example here is Laconia. They have a special event TRC, and so the TRC process can also be used for special events, usually large outdoor gathering events. The kind of a really good example of this special events review committee is utilized for Laconia Bike Week. So the review committee is another arm of the planning board that has been granted site plan review approval authority over site plan applications relating to Bike Week. The committee membership is slightly different than the regular TRC in that it consists of departments most involved in Bike Week, such as planning, police, fire, water, DPW, code enforcement, and licensing. A special event TRC can be useful for seasonal outdoor events by helping the municipality plan, organize, and enforce seasonal or special events land use activities. And so we're just going to wrap things up with some final thoughts here, and I'll just read these out really quick. And then we'll go into the Q&A. So if you have any questions, start putting them in the chat now. So the TRC is designed to ensure that information is provided to the applicant as early as possible. There are many ways to use the TRC process, and TRCs will result in better clarity for all involved. We've given you some great examples of that, as well as ensure greater speed, accuracy, and compliance through the application process. So for communities with TRCs after submittal, an applicant that needs more time between TRC and planning board meetings should make such a request in writing. And there's a lot of flexibility benefits the applicant and the municipality, and assists the planning board in its workload by assuming minor site plan review and conceptual reviews, etc. And with all of that being said, here's our contact information. If you have any further questions, and this is also in the slide deck that's on our website that Elvina shared in the chat. And if you have any questions, you can populate them in the chat. And we've got Matt here. He's graciously offered to answer a few questions if we still have. If you have anything, so let's see. We've got a question that says, "What about a TRG, technical review committee?"
What is a TRG?
Group, technical review group.
Oh,
perhaps.
okay. Bob, I am not sure about that one. I'd have to check that out.
Perhaps it's a different name for a similar, same or similar.
It could be. Yeah. I mean, I think in the end, the key with all this is to just think about how you're going to use it, right? If it's for approvals and minor site plans, that's a clear path. It's, spelled out in the RSAs. It's like a little mini planning board process. If it's going to be advisory, the key there is communication as early as possible with as many of the stakeholders that are going to be weighing in on the project. So your department heads, the board, the checklist, the zoning, like all those things. Building inspector should be there too, right? Because they may see something from the code standpoint that comes up. Just happened in Chichester the other day. But yeah, I think no matter what they're called, just remember the purpose of the two, and that you'll stay on the right track.
So I just want to chime in. This is Brendan McDowell's colleague Noah Hodgetts at OPD about that TRG question. So yeah, there are some communities that refer to them as technical review groups. And part of that is comes out of some case law in Paul Martin versus the city of Manchester about whether TRG going by TRG versus a TRC constitutes a public body for notice purposes. I understand some communities have used TRGs as they're really just fully advisory. They don't necessarily take on all the same powers under 67443. And as a result, the case has kind of basically said you don't have to necessarily follow all the same notice requirements.
Mm.
That's good. Yeah, that sounds like you kind of answered that next question that just came in about
Yeah.
notices specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah, I
know.
mean,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
I was just gonna say, as far as the no approval authority, it's you can theoretically have department heads meeting at a department head meeting discussing, an application that may come up or something, right? So yeah, so that doesn't, there's no abutter notice required on that. But I will say, it's good to, all meetings should be, you post your agenda 24 hours in advance, that kind of thing. But yeah.
Okay, and then we had another question. Someone asked, when you say superintendent, are you
Mhm.
referring to a school district superintendent or that
Yeah.
of a town department?
Yeah, the superintendent of schools. Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
they're gonna, I think once or twice in Allenstown, I've seen them pop
Mm,
in on like a large subdivision for the advisory TRC. They may weigh in on that, talking about, here's where we're gonna want to see, like, the bus routes and numbers for their school numbers and those kinds of things. And 98% of the time they're not coming. But yeah, superintendent of schools.
mm, excellent. So we can wait for another minute or so since we're a little early on our time. See if there's any other questions that pop in. Pop into the chat.
I just want to, sorry, go back to Kyle's question a minute on again, this notice requirement as public hearing. So, and again, that putting aside a minute that distinction between TRG and TRC. So the statute 67443 Roman numeral 3 doesn't actually refer to technical review committees. It refers to special site plan review committees. I'm actually not really aware of almost any community that uses that name.
No.
Again, really the distinction is between committee and group. But if you are a technical review, a committee, regardless of the advisory or approval authority, 674-43-3 does say that 676-4, which is the process for approval of plats, kind of normal application for planning board, would apply. And that would include the notice requirement for noticing those meetings, as well as producing minutes for those meetings that would be open to public inspection under 91A.
Right, for the approval TRC.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, I'm not seeing any additional questions populating in the chat. So, and if that's the case, I guess we can wrap up a little bit early. Appreciate everyone sticking with us with a little bit of technical difficulties at the beginning. Not sure what was going on there, but yeah, thank you all so much for sticking with us. And please fill out our short online feedback survey if you have a chance. Yeah, I don't know if Matt has any closing words or anything, but
No, I mean, just, if you're doing the approval TRC, follow the RSAs for planning board approval process. If you're doing advisory, communication is the key early and often, and that's really it. So,
excellent.
yep.
All right, perfect. Well, yeah, thank you, Matt, so much. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come chat with us, and yeah, thank you all who attended. We'll see you next time.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.